welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Fury from the Deep, written by Victor Pemberton and directed by Hugh Davis. Now, this time, as you can see, I have no DVD cover. That is because this story, all episodes are missing in the BBC archives. However, they announced earlier this year that they were making a animation, a fully reconstructed animation, I believe by the same people who did Power of the Daleks, the Faceless Ones, the Macra, and I can't remember if they've done any more, but I think it's that crew. And the story, I don't know when it gets released, but as far as this video is concerned, which is shot at the end of April, it hasn't arrived. It hasn't been released yet, and also as well we're in lockdown, so I don't think we would have seen it anyway. So I'm using the loose cannon reconstruction, using telesnaps, which we have audio, because we have all the audios, but we only have like pictures, and so we get pictures timed to the audio. So that's how I watched this story. Now, Fury from the Deep is a story that is critically praised by many fanboys. I know a few big channels on this website, especially He Who Moans, the guy who does those stick reviews of the Eighth Doctor audio adventures. He has said that Fury from the Deep is his favourite classic Doctor Who story, and a lot of people agree with him that Fury of the Deep is one of the best. However, for me personally, I don't know if this is going to be like a sin to say this, but it didn't do that much for me. Now, it's still a really great story. It has a great atmosphere, brilliantly acted. It's very claustrophobic, and the villains as well, which we will get into. Aspects of them are very well handled, but something about it feels a bit lacking, and I think it's less of what it does and more what it doesn't, and that is to bring a lot of stuff to it, a lot more taste, colour to it. It seemed pretty dry, in my opinion. Now, this is 6 parts long, so I'm not going to detail too much about the story. But I will say it starts off introducing us to the sonic screwdriver, a device which becomes like a complete hindrance for writers and stuff later on. But here it only appears in one scene right at the start, and when it gets introduced, you're like, right, now this is like the first appearance of the sonic screwdriver. Clearly the Doctor's going to use it later on to like solve lots of the problems, but he hardly does it, and it does become quite a bit of a problem, because it's like there's certain times where I feel like the sonic screwdriver could have been very handful, but because they introduced it here, it's kind of like why didn't they use it there at certain points? But that's just my opinion on it. The story also deals a lot with Victoria, because in this story, spoiler alerts, she leaves at the end of it. And it's very strange, because usually in classic Doctor Who, especially 60s Doctor Who, the companion exit would mainly just be focused at the very last episode, or just even the last scene for a lot of them. But here, the actual story, her storyline is basically her wanting to leave. When they arrive and all this stuff happens, she's questioning a lot, and she's always like, she talks to Jamie and is like, why do we always find ourselves into trouble? Could we just go to one place where I'm not being attacked and screamed? And you really do empathise with her, because it was kind of, I like how she's written here, because even though she is kind of like the cliched companion, which I think Victoria, she had huge trouble. It was written throughout her stories. I always had a problem with it because I think she had a much more better character than the stories would allow her. This Victorian, sweet, innocent girl who had her parents murdered in front of her, and the doctors basically adopted her as his adopted daughter, and I like their relationship with each other. But it never really plays out, and she becomes more like a damsel in distress in every story she's in, which is okay in her first story because that was her main role. But when it was constantly happening, I think it did start becoming an issue. And here, it's kind of self-aware how much it is, because her story is that she's fed up of it, and the only way to not be the damsel in distress is to get herself out of the stress, so to leave the doctor and the crew. And I think that might have been maybe a coincidence that maybe I'm like reading into it a bit too much. However, I think there's evidence to support this in a scene where they discover that the weakness of the monster is her screaming, and there's a bit where she's asked to scream into a microphone and she is like, I really don't want to do this, it's really silly, and it becomes really intense because she wants to do it, which is kind of silly, but it is very well handled. And even the doctor's like, oh no, don't ruin this for us, Vicky, come on, you can scream. Victoria, I keep calling her Vicky, I do apologise. Force of habit. So, yeah, so that's like the deal, and then when she leaves at the end, the scene, it's a lot more longer than a usual ending. Like, the actual ending of the story, the climax of the story, happens halfway through the last episode. And then we get like a dinner scene, and then we get Victoria announcing basically to the Doctor and Jamie that she's leaving. And then she gets these sweet moments with Jamie and the Doctor. Now, usually, because of the way Doctor Who is structured, these are only like a scene or maybe 2 scenes long. However, here it's half an episode. I think it personally really works, and it shows just how much Jamie and the Doctor cared for her. Especially Jamie, who's really down by this, and he's like, "Why? We shouldn't leave her, Doctor. We should think." But then the Doctor's like, "It's her choice." And I love the Doctor's acceptance of it. The way he always speaks like very sweet towards her, as if like he knows that to her safeguard, her protection, the person she looks up to is the Doctor, and so he kind of speaks to her slowly and sweetly, and then the scene at the end where he talks to her and is like, "We'll give you a day to think about it, but if you want to leave, it's perfectly fine." And it's very, it's Patrick Troughton just nails it. So that's Victoria's exiting. Now, the story is a base under siege story, which is a huge, as you probably realise by now, almost every story in season 5 is a base under siege story. Now, usually, if you have a season where you have a lot of the same type of plots, it might feel repetitive. However, season 5 had some of the best stories in the series, so it does kind of make up for it. And here it's very well. It clearly shows a great understanding on why the bus formula works. You've got a small group of characters that we get along with our captain character, who's very like a grouchy character who doesn't know about if the Doctor's like a spy or the saboteur, and maybe should trust him. We got the scientist then, and I like how we get a little bit more with the scientist character. He has like a wife that gets ill because of the villains, and he has to deal with his work life with his ill wife, and then she goes missing, and he starts panicking. And there's still a lot of nice characters. We get a nice set of characters in a small set of space, which is mainly because BBC's budget, you can't spend a lot on sets and stuff. But the sets, look by the photos, look very nice, and the story is written very well, that we keep moving from 2 or 3 different sets. And you've got a villain that that basically covers the entire base, slowly it's making itself way in, and you know, there you go. So now we're gonna have to talk about the villain. Now the villain is, sorry, I'm laughing about it just thinking about it. It's seaweed and sea foam. That is not even a joke. But if you actually go on the Doctor Who Wikipedia page, it actually says the villain is a sea creature, seaweed, which is absolutely hilarious. And in the story, they constantly refer to it as just seaweed and foam. And that's it. And they explain that this seaweed is a very highly intelligent version of it that can read minds, and it kind of became human intelligence after absorbing human minds. Similar to, if you've seen the 11th Doctor Christmas special, The Snowmen, and how the dynamic between the villain and one of the characters in it, it's basically like that here, only a lot less stupid, which is kind of funny because this is a story about seaweed. However, I think the concept is very goofy, and yes, I think that might be one of the things that stops me from enjoying this story as much as most people. A lot of times you're like, come on, it's just seaweed, you know? However, the story has a lot of great moments that actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, make seaweed terrifying. Like I said, they control people's minds. If you touch the seaweed, you basically become infected, and you basically only want to do is protect the seaweed. And I think it's the cliffhanger for episode 2 is probably one of the most iconic cliffhangers. Now, the actual video clip of this cliffhanger survived. Not the episode itself, but only a clip. And it's one of the strangest scenes you will ever see. Out of context, it's absolutely hilarious. You got these two guys, they just walk into this woman's room and they open their mouths and you hear like a heartbeat, which is, the heartbeat is throughout the story, and it really sets up this this cabin fever, claustrophobic feeling that the story has. But anyway, that in the cliffhanger, you hear the heartbeat with that guy's opening their mouths, and the girl, she starts like going, starts like coughing and stuff, and then collapses. And it's just really strange, but in context, it somehow really works. You've got these two really creepy, almost cartoonish characters, which really don't fit with the rest of the story. But that's what makes them a bit odd and creepy, as if like there's something not right about these two people. And like I said, the heart-throbbing noise, which throughout the story, that is like throughout the story, and you hear it when the characters are listening to the pipelines or when the villain is close. And it just really sets up a great atmosphere for this story. But yeah, I haven't got much to talk about it. I didn't think it was as... I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great story, but I don't think it's as interesting as what most people think about it. I do think it is well-deserving of 6 parts. I just wished something just stood out a bit more apart from the seaweed. I wish there was a bit more... Maybe we could have had one of the villains having to be a bit more a villainly character, or a bit more emphasis on what the story is actually going for. Because you set up this cabin fever feeling and this dark, mysterious atmosphere and these brilliant characters, but then the actual story itself just feels like these elements, and they're not really, and the story is just playing along with them, but you don't have, like, nobody really learns anything. Nobody really has a character arc except for Victoria, but her character arc is very separated from the main bulk, which is the seaweed storyline. Sorry, that's just... I mean, how can you not laugh? Seaweed as a villain, and they made it work. But yeah, like, maybe you could have taken, like, maybe They could have taken like an environmental story, taking that, or maybe they could have had maybe more flaws to the original characters in the story and have it about them learning about their struggles and teaming up together. Because early on in the story, you do have them disagreeing in certain points, but it's never becomes a huge part that it's like the main focus of the story. So that's my big issue. It's that it deals with a lot of elements, but the story itself isn't actually as focused as it should be for the rest of the story. So there you go. We say goodbye to Victoria. Jamie and the Doctor are now travelling by themselves without a female companion, which I don't think has happened. No, wait, yes, I tell a lie. The Doctor and Stephen were travelling by themselves. But, yeah, so there you go. Now we got one more story in season 5, but we're not going to watch that yet. We're not going to see that yet. For the next time, we are going to listen to something that's free. Hooray! So join me next time where we have a little mystery in the last day at work. So join me next time on the next episode of the Doctor Who Marathon. See you then.